it's Renee with Delaney Jane Cards. Welcome back to my channel. Today is my first design team video for Not Too Shabby Shop's February videos. And I'm using the Rabbit Hole Designs Caffeinated Goat. It was brand new from the Rabbit Hole Designs, and it is one of them funny characters, and every time I get one of these, I think, gosh, that is my spirit animal. Up until a few years ago, I didn't even drink coffee. So that will tell you what having a bunch of little kids will do to you. You will become a very tired goat. So I had pulled out some Doodlebug papers. I had the Puppy Love pad and the Dragon Tails pad, and I am going to paper piece this. I know, surprise, surprise, right? Copic coloring and paper piecing is kind of my thing, and that's what I'm going to do. This goat has the craziest, coolest, most unique robe on, and it's got like grass on the cuffs. So I thought, of course, the body of the robe needed to be clouds because, well, if there was a paper pad with all clouds in it, I would own it because I love cloud pattern paper. When I paper piece, I like to shade my pieces. I feel like it just makes them more finished. So I used a C00 and a C3 here to just shade around all of the edges of the robe. And you can see the pattern paper that I picked. The cloud pattern is slightly, well, is kind of small. I needed to make sure that I had one that you could really tell what it was once I, cut the piece out. And then for the cuff, I had this little piece of green grass paper, and I made sure that I stamped the cuff in the bottom of the robe on that so that the grass was going in the right direction. And then I had a tiny little piece of rainbow houndstooth there that I stamped the mug on. Now for this goat, I really couldn't decide what color I wanted this goat to be. Goats come in all sorts of colors, and we used to have goats a long time ago. We had goats, and they were like brown and grayish. So I thought, well, I'll make brown and grayish goats. So I used this E combination, E21, 25, and 29, and they are pretty far apart. The E21 and 25 are really far apart, but the 25 and 29 blend really nicely. So even though the numbers are the same distance apart, those two colors blend really, really nice. So the reason that it didn't bother me that these were so far apart, now it did bother me a little, but it doesn't bother me as much because I do plan on coloring over this with a technique called Copic glazing. If you've followed my channel for any length of time, I've talked about it a few times. It's kind of where you can lay some color down and then go over it with another layer of a totally different color of Copic. It'll change the tone, the hue, the feeling of the image. So here I was just making sure that I had my darks where, my shadows were going to be really, really dark. And my lights that I was using the E21 for are really, really, it's a big contrast. So it's way lighter. I did work at it a little bit, and I could have probably just kept working at it. If I want to use this combo in the future, what I should do is probably buy a marker that's between the 25 and the 21, or do some tip to tip, because that's really far apart. But just adding to my list of things that I probably could buy, but I have not. So here's the glazing part. I used a W3 and a W5 here. I went over the entire image with the W3, and then I am going in the darkest places with the W5, and I am going to give this goat a 5 o'clock shadow and make sure that it looks terrible. And you can really color these animals terrible, and they look great just because of the way that they are drawn. They are the funniest critters ever. So for his horns, goat horns here. I used some E40s, E40, E41, and E43. I wanted them to look like, I guess, horns, like bone horns. And I thought that would be good. And the horns come in all different colors too, so you could have colored them black or whatever. And then where the robe was going to be going on, I made sure I did run around the edges with a blue marker. And then that little back cuff there, I did not paper piece that. So I did just fill that in. So every time I color these, I always think bloodshot eyes. So I used E02 and E04 to add blood to the bloodshot eyes. I just feel like a crazy looking animal carrying a cup of coffee probably is tired. And when I'm tired, my eyes are bloodshot usually. Or maybe he was out drinking just a little too much. And then I just lightened everything up with my colorless blender. And then I used my E49, and when I first dotted it on the paper, I was like, oh, I could have just left it like that. But I did fill it in, and then I will go back later and add a white gel like dot for the eye. Then I realized that I had not colored his tail, so I quickly colored that with the same colors, and then reinforced that 5 o'clock shadow on that goat because he needed to look more terrible. I did go around all of the pieces with my black marker that I use and made sure that I finished off all the edges, and then I just adhered the pieces down. Now the robe, I cut it out as a full piece, and I will piece the cuffs on top of it. It just made it easier. That grass was kind of a pain to cut out, but I didn't want to have to cut it out twice, and that would have been really hard to make sure I had it perfect, I guess, to fit them together. So this was just the easiest, and I like to paper piece, and I want it to be as easy as possible. So that's what I did here. Then I did piece on that little piece of houndstooth paper for the mug. Paper piecing is a great way to use pattern paper if you struggle with pattern paper at all. Maybe putting clothes on a character, or I have a couple of cards on my channel where I have built scenes using different pattern papers. It's fun. I look at it as another coloring medium, and I really do enjoy paper piecing. So here I had stamped the caffeine symbol in the back, and then I stamped the meh meh in VersaFine Onyx Black, and then I did heat emboss that with black. And then I also stamped the rest of the sentiment, which says caffeine releases my inner kid, with the VersaFine Onyx Black, and also heat emboss that with some black embossing powder. Just thought that really sets that sentiment aside and makes it stand out more. It's raised. And then I used my pattern papers, and I did mix the two pattern papers from the two different paper pads, the Puppy Love and the Dragon Tails. Doodlebug papers go really well together, and these two had very similar color combinations, so they were very easy to mix together. I did throw a little bit of a shadow there underneath the goat, so he wasn't just standing on nothing. And then I added a little bit of a background with the B60. B60 is a super, super light blue color, kind of mauve-y a little bit, and it does fade out to white really, really nicely with the colorless blender, so it adds just a little bit. And then I layered up all of my pattern papers, and the kind of plaid background here is not quite A2 size, so I do have some space around that. So I cut this piece of orange cardstock, and it matches this back pattern paper perfectly. It also picks up the orange that's in the houndstooth on the coffee mug. So I layered everything down, and I just turned that around. I didn't center it on that black piece of paper, but I knew that it was going to be able to cover up a bunch of that, so I made sure I had the two sides that had the most even border. And then because that's layered, and I didn't want to pop this goat up, I just actually layered two pieces of black cardstock together, just little corners, so that everything would lay flush when I put this on here. And I layered that on, and then made sure it was straight, because, well, I have trouble with that sometimes. And then I decided to put the sentiment here. And when I had the idea for this card, I thought it would be fun to use just regular staples. So that's what I used there. And then the end of it does hang over in those 2 layers. So again, I just added 2 little tiny pieces of cardstock and adhered them together and put them underneath here so that I didn't need foam tape and that didn't sink. And then the meh, I definitely decided to pop that up. So I did use a little piece of foam tape to add some dimension there and put that in. I just think that this layout is super fun. And there was a little smudge, so I tried to get it off. It is what it is. It's a homemade card. Then I added the little white dot back to the eyeball and some gel pen details on the mug and the hoops. And I have been finishing the insides of my cards lately, and I'm loving it. I have seen people do it for a long time, and I just never did. And one of my friends here on YouTube does it all the time, and she very much inspired me to make sure I finish my cards. And I at least try to finish them every time with something as simple as this, stamping the goat on the inside with the meh. There's plenty of space to write a message. Then I just adhered this entire card panel to my card base. Oh, I did cover where the staples were with a piece of tape just so it didn't poke through my card base or the front of my card. And then I used some glossy accents from the eye. I did make sure I went around that little white dot. I know that it kind of can dissolve that underneath, so I just went right around it and was just very careful. So that is my card. I absolutely appreciate you stopping by. I would love to know what you think in the comments. I would be super excited if you would like and subscribe. And if you have any questions, I'm absolutely here to answer them. If you haven't checked out Jamie's shop at the Not Too Shabby Shop, please go ahead and do so. She's got this in her store with so many other things, and she offers a discount code. The N2S10 will get you 10% off your order. There are some restrictions, and like I said, thank you for stopping by, and as I always say, give cards generously. Bye!